Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2024 Masters DFS Tactics show. That's right, we are less than 12 hours away from the Masters Championship, barring any unforeseen, or I shouldn't say unforeseen, but barring any delays, which we'll get into here in a moment. Quite excited. First major of the year. We're coming in with lots of momentum after hitting the Akshay Bhatia outright last week and having a pretty successful DFS campaign last week for the Valero Texas Open. We have everything that you need to optimize, finalize, and dominate this week for the Masters. Updated win forecast, the most up to the second projected ownerships, our favorite 6K plays, players to pivot to, fade away from, all of that good stuff. So want to get right into it. It's going to be a great show. I'm looking forward to the Masters. So all statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is the best golf analytics tool out there for your money. There are a lot of great golf analytics tools out there. No doubt about that. I simply believe Fantasy National is the best. It's going to give you everything you need to make the most optimal outright plays. Dominate the DFS, has lineup generator, ownership projections, rolling models. Again, everything you need to be at your best week in and week out in terms of golf wagering and DFS. So go check out fantasynational.com. You will not regret it. In the description to the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where I post research every week on the PGA Tour. Generally around previous winners, a little bit of course statistics, patterns that those previous winners have displayed leading into their win, and the players that fit the criteria that week. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, then give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contests I play. That's no different this week as well. It'll come out after the DFS Tactics show later on this evening. So if you want to see the wagers that I've made, the players that I'm using most often, then give me a follow over at X. And then lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a very good article called The Fringe. It's free to subscribe to. It's a great way to start your week of preparation, and he continues to update you throughout the week in terms of his own version of recent form, course history, and the like. It's a great way to accentuate, I guess is the word I'm looking for, or to add pieces of research to your information. I wouldn't recommend him if I didn't truly 100% believe in what he was doing and what he shares. So go follow him over on social media and subscribe to his article. Again, it is free to do so. And if you are a subscriber, you're going to know already that you are able to join us in his Substack chat every Wednesday evening over on Substack. He's gracious enough to host me over there. We continue the DFS talk after the show, or after calls, where we talk about game theory, our favorite parts of the price board, our scary fades, all of that stuff. So again, the only way you're going to be able to join us is if you are a subscriber to his article. I highly suggest you do so. Lastly, for this intro, we are live. Chat is open. Want to hear from you all. In addition to the poll question, which I will put up momentarily, who's your winner this week? Where do you think Tiger finishes? Do you think there's a delay tomorrow? And we'll cover that here shortly. All of that good stuff. Who are you pivoting to, fading away from? Want to hear everything you have and think for the Masters. So let's figure out our strategies and our tactics for the 2024 Masters Championship. And we start, as we always do on a Wednesday evening, with the updated forecast, the super forecast over at Windfinder. Before we do anything else, let me go ahead and post the poll question. Thought about it a little bit today, and there's obviously several storylines every Masters tournament. But to you, what is the biggest story of the Masters this year? And I only had room for 4 options. Is it Rory trying to complete the slam? Is it the Sam Burns and Scottie Scheffler potential withdrawal? which, again, I will cover here momentarily? Is it the performance of the LIV guys, since they haven't been on the PGA Tour? Or is it Tiger? Because Tiger. So would love to hear the community's thoughts on what you think is the most important storyline or the biggest storyline coming into the Masters. Now, I will cover the Sam Burns and Scotty Scheffler thing momentarily, but first let's cover the weather, the updated forecast. Tomorrow is potentially a wash. I'm pretty sure we'll get some amount of golf in tomorrow, but you can see there looks to be more than an inch of rain dropped on Augusta National in about a 2-hour period in the morning. And with that, just severe winds. Winds up into the upper teens, maybe even 20s in sustained winds. Gusts into the 30s and maybe even reaching 40 miles an hour. Just horrendous conditions to play golf in tomorrow, if we are indeed, in fact, able to get some of the Masters in tomorrow morning. And Friday, minus the rain, doesn't look much better. No precipitation, but cooler and still a lot of wind. Wind into the upper teens, gusts into the 30s. Very, very, very difficult first 2 days of golf at Augusta National. Now, if this rain truly does arrive, which it appears like it's going to, there's probably going to be some delays. I can't envision there not being, but we also can't assume that there will be, because weather can change quite easily. But I would have to assume there's going to be some delays given this forecast. Regardless, Thursday and Friday we're dealing with tons of wind. Tons of wind. And if we zoom out for the weekend, Saturday morning still looks precarious in terms of the amount of wind that the players will see. It does look like it will taper off a little bit in terms of gusts, but still some fairly high sustained winds, gusts into the mid-teens. Now, Sunday looks fantastic. Very little wind, at least in terms of sustained. The weather, or the temperature looks like it's going to rise. Sunday looks pretty darn good for Masters Championship Sunday, but Thursday and Friday look horrendous. I mean, just absolutely atrocious in terms of weather. Now, there is essentially one big wave. We don't have an AM and a PM half of the draw. Even so, I don't think I'm going to try and target a particular half of the draw. Say if they're teeing off, late on Thursday and probably more than likely early on Friday. I'm just not going to deal with it, because this rain could absolutely throw a wrench into all of the plans and cause delays and whatnot, and who knows how long those delays would be. So instead, I'm doing what I have generally done for the past month or so, and anybody who is just not good in the wind, I'm not considering at all. Just look at the amount of wind that we have. So that is the way I'm approaching this forecast. Just anybody that does not play well in the wind, I'm just out. No, thank you. Instead of focusing on particular tee times, I'm just staying away from anybody who is bad in the wind. So there's a look at the forecast for Augusta National tomorrow and Friday, and a little bit of a bigger picture view for the weekend. We move to Fantasy National, and before we cover anything in terms of rankings, let me explain what the Sam Burns and Scotty Scheffler potential withdrawal means. Just to be upfront, I obviously don't have direct knowledge. I don't have direct access to these guys. I can only take them at their word. But throughout this week, they have said that if their wives go into labor, they will withdraw. I can only take them at their word. Sam Burns and Scotty Scheffler's wives are due this later. I think it's actually early next week and maybe in a couple weeks. So again, just taking them at their word. If they indeed withdraw, that is a pretty big storyline. That's why it was an option up there, and I'm giving you that information. If you have not seen that this week, Scotty Scheffler and Sam Burns' wives are deep into the third trimester, expecting very, very soon, and they have said that they will withdraw if their wives go into labor. But coming back to the forecast and how crazy we saw it be, and pardon me as I unstar these players as I was gathering the projected ownerships right up to showtime. You see that I have the moderate and windy filters selected. I think that's, nope, one more down here. I have the moderate and windy filters selected. In the past 2 years, or 36 rounds, in moderate and windy conditions, our top performers have been Scotty, Rory, Victor Hovland, Patrick Cantlay, Xander, Tyrrell Hatton, Wyndham Clark, Justin Thomas, Jon Rahm, and Jordan Spieth. Continuing on down probably to about the top 20, Connors, McCarthy, Cam Smith, Matt Fitzpatrick, Max Homa, Adam Scott, Neiman, Ricky, Will Zalatoris, and Sahith Theegala. There's your top 20 or so in terms of total win performance the past couple of years. The other end of the spectrum, players who have not been good in the wind: Eric Van Rooyen, Camilo Villegas, Tom Kim, which is a little bit surprising because he's been very, very good in the windiest of windy conditions, but he's been pretty bad in moderate wind. So take that however you will, considering I am using the moderate and windy filter. Olesen, Zach Johnson, Cam Young has not been particularly good in moderate and windy conditions. His is the inverse of Tom Kim. He's actually been very bad in the windiest of windy conditions, actually been pretty good in moderate. Malnati, Willett, so on there. There's your worst performers in the wind the past couple of years. With the amount of wind that is in the forecast, especially the first 2 days, I do not see this playing anything other than extremely difficult. It might get easier as the week goes on, but I see this playing extremely difficult the first 2 days. So win rounds have been difficult relative to par. Our top performers have been Scotty, Rory, Wyndham Clark, Victor Hovland, Will Zalatoris, Cam Smith, Patrick Cantlay, Jon Rahm, Xander, and Tommy Fleetwood. Coming on down again to about the top 20 or so, Homa, Hatton, Spieth, Finau, Ricky, Henley, Fitz, Brooks, Colin Morikawa, and Batia are our top 20 in terms of total performance when it's been difficult. At the other end of the spectrum, Tiger, again, just very few rounds. Eric Van Rooyen, Luke List has not been great when it's been very difficult. Olesen, Grayson Murray, Nick Dunlap, Villegas, JT, Zach Johnson, Malnati, Højgaard, so on down the list. You can see there's your worst performers when rounds have been difficult relative to par. I think that's enough for review. Let's go ahead and check out the mixed condition model that I have made for the Masters this week and talk about some metrics that I kind of wanted to include, just ran out of percent, some areas where I might be weak, and whatnot. So the mixed condition model starts with 15% in strokes gained approach. This is a second shot course. I much prefer players or strong iron players overall, not just Masters week. So I wanted to put 20% in here, but I also understand that Augusta really favors some certain areas of a player's game. Hey, good evening, P. Happy Masters week. Glad you could join me this evening. It's good to see you. Who is your winner for the Masters? Where do you think Tiger finishes? Have you made your lineups? Who have you pivoted to and fading away from? All of that good stuff. Good to see you this evening. So 15% in approach, 15% around the green. Look, these greens are extremely difficult to hit. And with all the wind, players are going to be missing these greens more often than they want. So you're going to have to be able to get up and down. And that's why I have such an emphasis in around the green. Not scrambling, not sand saves, just the ability to get up and down. So strokes gained around the green, 15%. And we saw Monday night in the Data Dive show and at the end of the show with some research that almost every single champion comes to the Masters having gained strokes gained around the green in their previous event. So just a big factor around Augusta National, and it's imperative to be in good around the green form as well. 5% on Lightning bent greens, very small sample size, but these greens have been nothing but Lightning over the years. Lightning in terms of speed, we know that they are pure bent. So 5% in putting on Lightning bent greens, but that's not all the putting that we have. We'll see a little bit, or at the end of the mixed condition model, another putting metric that we've talked about a little bit throughout the week. 5% in terms of total putting on Lightning bent greens, 5% in driving distance on long courses. Now, this was kind of a default for me to use the long course filter. I could honestly understand if you wanted to use fairways easy to hit. I really toyed or thought heavily about using that filter with driving distance, but I went ahead and just kind of went to my default of using long course, using the long course filter with driving distance, since driver is going to be in majority of players' hands on majority of the holes. I only have it at 5%. This was the last metric in to the mixed condition model. I honestly thought about leaving it out, but if that were the case, I would have had no off the tee statistics in the mixed condition model, and I thought that would have been a mistake. So I only have 5% here in driving distance, and you'll see this is one of the first areas where this mixed condition model could be weak if off the tee ends up playing a pretty big factor. I don't foresee it being that because these fairways are so wide with the mowing from green to tee generally limits rollout. So I wanted to focus on the distance half. But bombers aren't necessarily the be-all, end-all here. You think about players like Patrick Reed, even Jordan Spieth, who's not terribly long. They've had quite a bit of success here. So you don't have to have it. It's just a little bit of a bonus. 5% in greens gained when scoring is difficult relative to par. Again, you could look at this on long courses. You could look at this in the wind if you wanted to. I wanted to put this at 10%, but knowing that I wanted to emphasize some around the green and emphasize some other things a little bit lower in the mixed condition model, I was only left with 5%. But I do think greens are going to be a pretty big factor this week. We talked about how they're so difficult to hit, and that's why I have so much in the around the green. So if a player is able to gain greens at a significant rate, they're going to have such a distinct advantage over the other players in the field this week. So I didn't want to ignore it, but I kind of ran out of percentage and only had 5% left for greens when it's difficult. 15% in bogey avoidance when rounds are difficult to par. Again, this is kind of my default. I mentioned this Monday, how I prefer to combine a scoring metric like bogey avoidance, birdies gained, and whatnot with a scoring filter, difficult, easy to par, and whatnot. You could absolutely look at bogey avoidance on long courses. You could look at bogey avoidance in the wind, considering the amount of wind is in the forecast. But this is my default. But what I do feel very confident in is that the Masters year over year highlights bogey avoidance. Pars are great scores around Augusta National with the exception of the par 5s. So 15% on bogey avoidance when rounds are difficult relative to par. To round out the mixed condition model with the 3s, 4s, and 5s, like we talked about it all week, the par 3s just aren't terribly important around here. So only 5%. Even John Rahm last year was only slightly above field average on par 3 performance. Now, 2019 Tiger and 2022 Scotty, they played the par 3s pretty darn well, so I didn't want to ignore them. But only 5% par 3s, 10% in total par 4s, and 5% in the 450 to 500 length of par 4s. We saw Monday in the Daily Dive show, this was a heavy portion of the strokes gained total in all of par 4s. I think something to the effect of 72% of the strokes gained in par 4s come to this range. So that's why the focus on that range or singling it out, treating it as its own metric, looking at that range of par 5s, of par 4s. But total par 4s, they're still going to need to be played very well to contend here at the Masters. 15% par 5s, you gotta take advantage of them like almost any other professional course, but especially at Augusta. The par 5s represent 4 of your 5 best scoring opportunities. You got to take advantage of them and then hold on for dear life the rest of the course. So on top of the bogey avoidance, when pars are great scores except for on the par 5s at a course, you really emphasize those par 5s. So 15% in total par 5s. Lastly, 3-putt avoidance on lightning bent greens, the other part of the putting in the mixed condition model. 3-putt avoidance is so very crucial around Augusta National with these greens that are very undulating, very, very fast, especially if you're putting downhill. 3-putt avoidance becomes critical. Almost 1 full 3-putt per round on average at Augusta National. So there's a look at the mixed condition model that was made for the Masters this week. Again, the most obvious, I can't say omission because we have driving distance, but the most glaring potential weakness or the metric that is least covered in the mixed condition model is off the tee. If off the tee becomes a big factor this week, I will be weak to that. If putting matters a little bit more, if distance matters a little bit more, it could, especially with the rain. It could be really, really soft, at least in the fairways, and really limiting the amount of rollout players get. I could see greens being a little bit more important than what I've given them credence to. Again, I just ran out of percentage. If specifically the par 3 or par 5 matters, but overall, Augusta National has played pretty darn similarly year over year, and these are the metrics that it enhances that week and demands of the players to be good at. So there's a look at the mixed condition model for the week. Let's go ahead and go to Microsoft Excel, the reveal of my rankings, and apologies, I'm going to center this camera just a bit. A reminder, am I blurred out? Let me see if I can't. There we go. Now it's focused. A reminder for those who are returning viewers or for your information if you are a new viewer. My rankings are based on 3 criteria. The FNGC rank, which we just covered. It spits out a ranking based on the metrics and the percentages that we just covered in the mixed condition model. Course value is an attempt at giving a player a value on how well they have played a course. Normally in the last 5 years with the Masters and a limited field, I went ahead and went all the way back to 2012. That's just as far back as Fantasy National goes. And then we are playing DFS. Percent owned is another portion of my rankings. So I don't take into consideration tee times or good half or bad half of the draw if there is one. I do that kind of on my own. But the reveal of my rankings for the Masters this week. Number 1 player, no shock, or at least probably shouldn't be, Scotty Scheffler. Will Zalatoris number 2, Hideki third, Tony Finau, and Rory round out my top 5. Xander, Matt Fitzpatrick, although I'm going to put an asterisk on that, Jordan Spieth, Sahith Theegala, and Siwoo Kim round out my top 10. Let me talk about the asterisk first. I'm not nearly as high on Matt Fitzpatrick as what the 7th ranking would indicate. Yes, he has been pretty darn good here at the at Augusta National, but you see the irons, they've been pretty bad lately. He is rising thanks to 2 main things. He is generally a grinder. You think about his win at the U.S. Open at the Country Club in 2022. Again, the U.S. Open is a daunting test of golf. I think it was the U.S. Open. It might have been the PGA. But generally, he's better when pars are good scores, so he's rising considerably there. And even though he is not in the best of form, he is still taking advantage of the par 5s. But you see his iron play has been lackluster, and the par 4s have been pretty lackluster. So I'm not nearly as high on Matt Fitzpatrick as it would indicate. He is rising again due to this very, very good course value. And Augusta is one of the most, if not the most, predictive for past success indicating performance this year and moving forward. So it is one of the most predictive courses. But I'm kind of with you, P. I can't say Fitzpatrick's a full fade. I can't. But I'm just making it known that I'm not nearly as high on Fitz as it would seem due to this 7th, being 7th in the rankings. Everyone else in here I don't really have a problem with. Scotty would have been my number 1 player regardless. No surprise to see him. Warner number 2. Zalatoris is getting a big boost considering he has finished 2nd and 6th in his 2 completed Masters. So again, this course value is extremely low, therefore vaulting him up in the rankings. Hideki, everything has been lining up very well for him in all of my research this week. Finau, Rory trying to complete the slam. Xander's been very solid here. I think 1 miscut, but generally pretty solid here. Spieth, Theegala. Siwoo may be a little bit of a surprise for some to round out my top 10, but look at some of these metrics. Top 15 in irons. Top 5 around the green, and we've talked quite a bit this week how important around the green is. He avoids bogeys when it's difficult as well. Top 10 in par 4s. He's got 1 really, really bad statistic. He's not the longest with the driver. So, but it hasn't stopped him from being okay here at Augusta National. So, there's a look at my top 10. Again, I've mentioned it all week. I'll do it again tonight. But I only collect PGA Tour statistics. I do not collect LIV. I do not collect DP World Tour statistics. So anybody that is not on the PGA Tour, hence these LIV guys, John Rahm, Cam Smith, Phil, DJ, these guys are going to rate lower than what they probably should be because they don't have the statistics for the PGA Tour. No approach, no around the green. Really, all of their statistics are coming from the majors, past Masters performance, and percent owned, which I can't believe John Rahm is only 12%. Which, speaking of, again, thanks to Gabe, he has been kind enough to share his sources information of projected ownership. So we have 2 sets of projected ownerships that we can work off. But there's a look at my top 10 in terms of rankings, again with a slight asterisk on Matt Fitzpatrick. Let's sort on the price board, see where our fellow contestants are going in terms of areas on the price board, which players they are gravitating towards, and perhaps some players that we can pivot to and gain some uniqueness in our lineups. So for the Masters this week, there are 5 players in the 5 digits. We have Scotty Scheffler at 12-1, John Rahm at 11-2, Rory at 10-8, Brooks at 10-2, and Wyndham Clark at 10,000 even. 2 live players and a debutante in the 10Ks. Surprising to see a debutante, at least in my opinion. Surprising to see a debutante here, but Wyndham Clark is quickly replacing Brooks on the PGA Tour by being the big game hunter. I don't think anyone's ever going to truly replace Brooks in terms of being the big game hunter, but Wyndham Clark is quickly becoming that. And you see these metrics. I mean, top 20 in the irons, the around the green is okay. Top 5 in a bunch, top 10, top 15 and on lightning bent putting. So he's got a lot going for him. He's falling, considering he has never played this course. So this is a pretty high value, because debutantes don't generally do all that well. It doesn't mean they can't. They generally don't do the best. Anyway, in terms of the 5Ks, pretty much in agreement between the two sources that Scotty Scheffler is going to be your most owned player in the 5Ks, or in the 5 digits, excuse me, in the 10Ks. 27% per game source, 20 to 21 here per Fantasy National. I would expect it to be in the 25 to 30% range. Nothing wrong with Scotty except for the putter. Let's see. Your uniqueness is indeed Wyndham Clark, anywhere from 9 to maybe 12%. Brooks is actually second per Gabe source. Now, a lot of the Fantasy National members like Brooks. He's obviously played very, very well here. Rory trying to complete the slam, garnering close to 20% per Gabe source. And then John Rahm at about 16% per Gabe source. So I'm going to have a little bit on all of these. Again, the live players are going to be lower in my ranking since I don't collect live statistics. But I really like John Rahm this week. If he is indeed closer to the 12% as opposed to the 16%, I would tend to use a whole lot of John Rahm. Going to be hard to ignore Scotty Scheffler on that in that case, but $1,000 cheaper essentially and 10% less ownership, pretty appealing for the defending champion and still arguably one of the best players in the world. Probably first or second, depending on your view. I don't have a problem with Wyndham Clark, but debutantes just kind of worry me around Augusta. They generally don't play the best. Again, like Sahith Theegala, top 10 last year. Jordan Spieth, runner-up to his debutante year. So it doesn't mean that they can't play well, but generally speaking, Augusta rewards having experience around the course. So I think I will make him 5th, last in the 10Ks. Oh, man. Just going off what I'm seeing, I'll probably make John Rahm number 1 in my ranking, or in the 10Ks, in the 5 digits, because you're getting $1,000 cheaper on him. You're getting 10% roughly, give or take. 10% ownership discount on him as well. Again, it's really, really hard to bypass Scotty. And I'm not saying you should. But Rahm also opens up quite a few possibilities to not have to dip into the 6Ks more than once if you don't want to, and you don't have to if you don't want to. So I'll go John Rahm first. I will make Scotty second. I mean, everything... Scotty's my pick to win. Spoiler alert. He's my one and done. I mean, I have saved Scotty all throughout the beginning portion of the PGA Tour season in one and done for the Masters. When I knew I was doing one and done, I just marked Scotty for the Masters. So I'll go John Rahm first and Scotty Scheffler second, and it is a very close, probably closer to a 1A and 1B as opposed to a 1 and 2. Rory played extremely well last week, but I think the pressure of completing the Slam might be a bit much. And seeing Brooks Koepka close to 8 to 9% uniqueness off of Rory, I'll probably make Brooks third in the 5 digits, Rory fourth, and Wyndham Clark fifth. Again, I might have Wyndham Clark or two. I'm just a little bit worried with the debutante status and the fact that it's first time seeing Augusta National. The fact these guys have played Augusta so very well year over year. So again, 10Ks, 5 digits. I'll go Rahm, then Scheffler, then Brooks, then Rory, and then Wyndham Clark, factoring in everything, ownership, price, all that. Moving into the 9s, you got a couple of unique options in here, mostly being Patrick Cantlay. Cantlay sitting at 5% per Fantasy National, 8% per Gabe Source. Nobody seems to be talking about Patrick Cantlay. Understandably, he's got some of the worst iron form I've ever seen him have. He's third to last in this field of the measured, irons. He has not been good with the irons. Around the green hasn't been good either. But getting a player of Cantlay's quality at anywhere between 5 and 8% is quite appealing. So that is very hard to pass up. The only other, I can't say only other. There's a couple other potential unique options in the 10Ks. Victor Hovland sitting at 8.5 per Fantasy National, closer to 10.5, maybe even 11 per Gabe Source, but still one of the most popular players. His around the green, even though it was getting better, is still the worst in this field. The worst. And his irons haven't been good either lately. Still avoiding bogeys at a decent rate, but for as much firepower as Victor has, he hasn't taken advantage of the par 5s. So there's quite a bit of concern for Victor, at least in my eyes. The other potential unique option is Will Zalatoris, and I love Will Zalatoris this week. So if Will Zalatoris does not play well this week, I will lose. I'm going to have as much Will Zalatoris as I feel comfortable doing. I'm going to be much more than the 14% that Fantasy National is on him. You see second and, this course value is amazing. Second and 6th in his 2 full tries at Augusta National. Love everything about Will Z this week. In the 9Ks, your most popular player, again for good reason, is Hideki, sitting at 21.5%. Hideki was the second name that I clicked in terms of an outright wager this week. So spoiler for my betting card that'll go up after the show this evening, Hideki is on there. Number 1 and around the green. Irons have been good. Former Masters champion. Love everything about Hideki this week. You always just accept the withdrawal risk with Hideki. But I like Hideki quite a bit. Let's see. Others in here. Xander getting a lot of love as well. Generally pretty consistent. Although he has missed one cut at the Masters. But generally pretty consistent. He doesn't have a bad statistic across here. The worst being his 3-putt avoidance, which is 35th. Top 40% in this field. So, lots to like there, but very, very popular. Neiman is probably going to be one of the more popular live players, except for maybe Rahm. He's been on an absolute tear on live. Lights out over there. But again, without seeing his statistics, I'm just going by results. He's been okay at Augusta National, but not great. So you have reason to fade him if you wish, considering he's right about 14% for both places, both sources of ownership. Spieth getting a little bit as well, anywhere between 12 and 14%. Irons still haven't been there, but it's Augusta, it's around the green, it's artistry. That's what Jordan Spieth is. Didn't talk about Obear. It's fine. He's going to be popular. Again, anywhere between this 12 to 14%. Probably most people's choice to be top debutante. It seems like it would fit Obear's game. So it's okay. But again, I'm just a little bit worried of his debutante status. So going to try and limit my use of Aubert. So in the 9Ks, as cheap of an ownership pricing you're getting on Cantley, I just cannot make him the number one. So I'll make Will Zalatoris the top player in the 9Ks, then Hideki, probably Xander, just because I'm not afraid of him bottoming out, missing the cut. Again, famous last words. You can at me whenever he does it at me next Sunday night when he does miss the cut. But I'm more confident in Xander performing well as opposed to Spieth. Like there is the bottom out potential with Spieth, and that's why I'm putting Spieth below Xander. So give me Will Z, Hideki, then Xander, and then Spieth in the 9Ks. I'll have a little bit of Aubert, although I'm going to try to limit my use of him. Neiman, okay, I guess. He's going to be popular. Not in love with it. I want to like Cantley, but man, there's not been a lot to be excited about. But you can bet that I'm going to use a little bit of Cantley, considering he's at anywhere between 5 to 8%. And he's way too talented of a player to be at 5 to 8%. So here's a look at the 9Ks, how I see it. 8Ks. A lot of live in here. Cam Smith and DJ, Bryson. So in the 8Ks, couple of unique options. Max Homa sitting at 8% per Gabe Source, less than 5% per Fantasy National. I'm with Fantasy National. I want no part of Max Homa, even though he's been top 20 or he's top 20 in my rankings. I don't want any part of Max Homa. He has really, really struggled around Augusta National. Now, yes, he's a much better player than he was, say, even 2 to 3 years ago. But he has really, really struggled around here and in the majors in general. So until he proves that he can do it, I'm just off of him. I want to like Cameron Young, but you see the popularity here. He is 14% per Gabe Source, 16% per Fantasy National, and he's not good in the wind. And we saw just how much wind there is in the forecast. So I'm going to be extremely cautious on using Cameron Young. Who am I going to in here? I love Tony Finau. He's going to be popular, but so be it. Gabe Source actually has him a little bit less than Fantasy National, so I like Tony Finau. I'll use some Cameron Smith as well. I like Cam Smith this week. 12% per Fantasy National, only 7% per Gabe Source. I have to believe Cam Smith will be closer to the 10 to 12%. He's been good around Augusta, so I like Cam Smith. Elsewhere in the 8Ks, with JT and his caddy change, I don't know. I don't have a good feel on JT. He's sitting right at 10% for both places. I don't have a good feel on it. If you like him, use him. You got plenty of reasons to like. The irons are still great. He's been great at Augusta. Takes advantage of par fives. If you don't like him, you got plenty of reasons not to. He's not been very good at avoiding bogeys. He has struggled when it's been difficult some. The putter can always hold him back. He actually hasn't been hitting a lot of greens either when it's been difficult. So you got reasons for and against him. I just don't have a good feel on him one way or the other. Morikawa, not in very good form. The irons are generally where he is at his best, and he's just not there. So because of that, I'm quite a bit lower on Morikawa as well. I don't want any part of Sam Burns. He has struggled around Augusta National as well. I do like Lowry a little bit, although he's quite popular. I do like Lowry a little bit, but in the 8Ks, I'm mainly using Tony Finau and using some Cam Smith. I'm in the upper part of the 8Ks, but I don't really like a whole lot else other than Shane Lowry, and he's just quite popular. Hey, good evening, Brobarian. How you feel about Homa? I'm off. Don't like him at all. And one of the main reasons is he has really struggled around Augusta National. Like you see per Fantasy National, at least the mixed condition model that I made, he rated out 12th. But again, just a reminder that I don't collect Live or DP World Tour statistics, so they don't have anything there. So he rated out fine. He's just struggled at Augusta National. He's struggled at the majors in general. And until he proves that he does it, no thanks, considering there are players of his caliber all around him. Tony Finau, yes, he's a little bit higher owned than Homa. Quite a bit higher owned, but I'm just much more confident in Tony than I am in Homa. So I've actually not been in the lower half of the 8Ks at all. I don't want any part of Sam Burns. Don't want any part of Homa. Like, I understand Bryson has the potential to just overpower Augusta. But then again, since he made the par 67 comment, I mean, he's gotten his ass kicked around here. So Bryson would not be one of the live players that I am keyed in on. I'm more keyed in on players like Cam Smith, on John Rahm. Perhaps a little bit, more obvious plays, yes, but I'm not there with Bryson. So that's how I see the 8Ks. Dustin Johnson's fine. He'll probably be right in that, say 9 to 11% range in terms of ownership. He's been fantastic here. It's okay. I just want Tony Finau a little bit more, and I think if I'm going to get comparative ownership from Cam Smith and DJ, I want Cam Smith, considering they're comparable in price as well, just 100 off. So there's a look at the 8Ks. Let's move to the upper 7s. I talked about Fitzpatrick a whole lot in the reveal of my top 10, but I'm not nearly as high on him as it would seem. His irons haven't been good. He's rising considerably because he generally plays very, very difficult courses as well, as in like PGA Championships and US Opens. And he's been good around Augusta National, so I don't think you can afford to, just mark him off. But I'm not nearly as high on him. No thank you on Brian Harmon. He's struggled around Augusta National as well, even though he's got some decent metrics that we've collected for the model. He's really struggled around here. Love Tagala. Him and Tagala and Matsuyama are the two pieces of heavy chalk, other than like Scheffler and probably John Rahm and whatnot. But in terms of heavy chalk outside the big guns, Hideki and Sahith are the two pieces of chalk I will eat. I love Sahith Tagala this week. He's a much better around the green player than I think than what this is showing. Irons are good. He's been taking advantage of par 5s. Really like Sahith Tagala. I wish there was a stat which dealt with Hart. I mean, if you were able to quantify the qualitative aspects of a player, mind or grit, however you want, come talk to me if you're able to put some numbers on it, put it in quantity or quantitative, because we're going to make a lot of money if you're able to do that. Because that's been one of the big things with analysts over the years, is trying to quantify unquantifiable metrics. Par 67 comment was destined to jack Bryson up. Yeah, I mean, I think it was... I understand why he was saying it, because he's just an extremely confident dude for good reason. He's a very good golfer, but it has backfired in a big way, and I don't know if I would have put it out there like that. Let's see. Elsewhere in the upper 7s, again, for much of the same reason of Sam Burns and Max Homa, I don't want any part of Tyrrell Hatton, even though he's rated out extremely well. He has struggled heavily around Augusta National. So no thanks on Tyrrell Hatton. if you can stomach the irons on J-Day, I think it's pretty well worth it because of this ownership. J-Day is projected anywhere between 4 and 6%. That is a lot of uniqueness on a player who has played Augusta National fantastic in his career, but the irons have been atrocious lately. So you have to be able to stomach that. And surprisingly, his putter on lightning and bent greens haven't been good either. So you got reasons to just completely stay away. I get it. I do want to mention it because he is so unique in the upper sevens. If you want to get off the Tagala, if you want to get off perhaps the Fitzpatrick or the Connors, who we'll talk about here in a second, J-Day's performance at Augusta National has been great. So keep it in mind. Corey Connors, I'm out on. Anytime you get a chalky Corey Connors, except for places where he loves, like Valero, it generally backfires. And at a place that rewards irons, and Corey Connors is certainly very, very good with his irons, he is equally as bad around the green. And you got to have some around the green prowess around Augusta. The ownership makes it very easy for me to fade Corey Connors. If he was closer to, say, maybe 11 or 12%, I would think about maybe using him a time or two. But I don't want any part of a chalky Corey Connors, especially since, even though I don't have it meaning much in the mixed condition model, he is really bad on bent as well. Tommy didn't rate out extremely well for me. Can we play Spieth? Hey, Josh. Good evening. Good to see you again. Hope all's been well. I covered Spieth pretty heavily in the 9Ks. Quick answer is yeah. Yeah, we can. It's Augusta. Augusta rewards artistry and creativity, and that's what Jordan Spieth is. Type of player benefits from this course. So one of the big things that I'm just going to mention, which I'm sure majority of people have mentioned this week, but just because it's obvious doesn't mean it's any less true. Experience matters here. So I'm quite hesitant to use debutantes. I won't shy away, it's not the fact that I won't use any of them, but they are certainly less in consideration for me because Augusta National really, really rewards experience. So players like Batia, players like Obear and Wyndham Clark, I'm going to be a little bit less on because they've never played here. As far as a specific type of player, you have to have very good irons, and you have to be able to get up and down from a myriad of different around the green possibilities, whether that's sand, uphill, downhill lies. Like, you have to have very strong approach and around the green. And that's why Siwoo Kim, which we haven't talked about, we're still in the upper sevens, but that's why Siwoo Kim rated out so well. Players like Henley rated out well. Those are the kind of players that generally you want to look for, is experience, preferably good experience, but at least some experience at Augusta. They have to be very, very precise with their irons, and they have to be able to get up and down. Because these greens are very, very hard to hit. So players are going to have to be relying on their short game a lot. So there's a look at the upper sevens. Again, Fleetwood didn't rate out well. I don't mind Tommy at all, really. I don't. He could be very, very popular. But you see around the green, he avoids bogeys. The irons are much better than what he's shown recently, I think. So I don't mind it a time or two, but just understand he's going to be pretty popular. In the upper sevens, if I'm not using Tagala, which is a lot of chalk, I might squeeze in a J-Day a time or two. I might have Fitzpatrick a time or two, but kind of like the low eights. the low 8s and upper 7s is an area that I'm just not here very much. Again, other than Tagala. Hey, well, I appreciate that, Barbarian. Not a problem. I'm by no means the best there is out there, but I try to give you a statistician and data analyst's view. That is what I'm hoping my appeal is, other than obviously being entertaining and informative. I give you a statistician and data analyst's view, as that is what I did in my previous life, if you will. Let's move to the low 7s. As unpopular of a player like Patrick Cantley is, Patrick Reed, he's been very good. Former champion here. I don't think you can ignore him. He's sitting at 9 to 12%. It's fine. You don't ignore him. Elsewhere in the low 7s, as much as I just talked about being a little wary of debutantes, I will not hesitate to use Bhatia if he fits in a lineup. I do like Akshay Bhatia, especially coming off the momentous win at Valero. Top 10 in irons. Takes advantage of par 5s. Again, just understand I play multiple lineups, so I can afford to take Bhatia a time or two. But the debutante status does kind of worry you. Russell Henley getting a whole lot of attention. 15% at both places. I can understand it. He's been very good here, but he's the lowest in terms of driving distance here. So maybe limit your use of Henley, because he's going to be fairly popular. Siwoo Kim's also going to be very popular. This is probably the third of the 3 chalky plays that I'll use. Siwoo's at 14% per Gabe Source, 16.5 here. Top 15 in irons, great around the green. Been pretty solid at Augusta National as well. Maybe not as solid as some others, but he's been good here. I want to like Jaeger, but the debutante status gives me a little bit of pause, and his irons aren't the best. So you maybe can think about it, but Adam Scott, worthy of a look, I think. But in the low 7s, I'll probably use a Henley a time or two, try to limit it because he's so popular. Bhatia, I'll use a time or two. Again, just kind of worried about the debutante. I like Siwoo. Hoping he's not as popular as this, but he probably will be, unfortunately. So moving into the 6s, this is where I've spent quite a bit of time trying to find the optimal players, because I like Scheffler, I like Rahm, I'm going to use Brooks, I'm going to use Spieth and Hideki and Zalatoris. So if I'm going to be using these stars, I got to find some scrubs as well, and those are the kind of lineups I've been generally building. So in the 6Ks, I do have probably 3 players to mention to you. The first being Chris Kirk. I like Chris Kirk quite a bit. He's been okay at Augusta National. Not great, but not atrocious by any means. A little bit more popular than I would like. 9% per Fantasy National, only 6% per Gabe Source. So, you're hoping obviously for this, closer to the 6%. But look at his stuff in 2024. Damn near top 20 in irons in this loaded field. Around the green is good. He's taken a complete advantage of the par 4s. He's been very good on lightning bent greens as well. He will have to be tons better on the par 5s. But at 6,900 and anywhere between 6 to 9% ownership, I like it. I like Chris Kirk quite a bit. I think you can squeeze him into a lineup with Scheffler or with Rahm. Come down into the 6Ks and he be the bottom part of your lineup. So I do want to mention Chris Kirk. Somebody else that I definitely want to mention is Denny McCarthy, yes, he is a debutant, but just like Akshay Bhatia, coming off fantastic tournament at the Valero, great around the green, irons. Generally, Denny's what holds Denny back is his irons. They've gotten better. They're still not, to the elite level yet, but this is very promising. Because of his all-world around the green and all-world putting, he's going to be able to avoid some bogeys. Like Chris Kirk, he's going to have to be better at the par fives. But I won't hesitate to use Denny McCarthy, especially at 6,200, anywhere from 6 to 8%. If you're going to get really greedy, try to do like a Scheffler and Xander, or maybe a John Rahm and a Spieth. If you're trying to get a lot and squeeze in a lot up at the top, I will use some Denny McCarthy. I'm going to try, the debutante status does, want me to slow my roll a little bit. But think about last summer when he lost in a playoff to Victor at the Memorial. There are a lot of similarities between Muirfield and Augusta. Lightning bent greens, very long course, very difficult course. Emphasizes around the green play. So I like Denny McCarthy a decent bit, especially for top debutante. I don't know what his odds are for top debutante, but something to think about. 2 amateurs that I want to put out there, and this, I'll combine these two and make it the third player to consider in the 6Ks. 2 amateurs. First one being Christo Lamprecht. We saw him at the Open Championship last year. The dude hits it quite literally 7,000 miles off the tee. Just a huge bomber. Kind of like Bryson, has the potential to overpower some of these par 4s and par 5s. It's worth a look. If you're only playing 1 or 2 lineups, then probably not. I would suggest, a Denny McCarthy or a Chris Kirk. But if you're playing multiple lineups, I don't hate the idea of throwing Christo Lamprecht in one of them, especially at his price, to get a lot of greed up top. He's going to be fun to watch regardless. Now, he's got a lot of volatility. He could absolutely top 25 this. I really feel like he is that talented of a player. He could also finish DFL and shoot 86, 84. He's got a lot of volatility, but he's going to be a fun player to watch. And bombers generally do fairly well here. So I want to mention Christo Lamprecht as an amateur. The other one, Stuart Hagestad. And even though he's an amateur, you see he has a course value here. He has played Augusta twice already as an amateur. He has made the cut before at Augusta National as an amateur. There's something to be said for that. Just like Lamprecht, I do not, advocate putting Hagestad in a lot of lineups. I'm just going to make math easy. If you're playing 10 lineups, it might be worth to look at Lamprecht and or Hagestad once in your stars and scrubs lineups. If you're only doing 2, 3, or even 1 lineup, I wouldn't. But if you're playing multiple lineups, I would take a look at these 2 as your amateurs, especially since they are not getting very much attention at all, less than 1% per Gabe source, less than 1% at Fantasy National. All right, there's a look at the price board. We still have lineups to make. I've been going for quite a while. So let's go to those who play tiers contests. And then we'll start making some classic lineups and try to figure out our big GPP lineups. Huge Hagestad fan. Yeah, I mean, he's played in several majors before as an amateur. Like, the guy is legitimately very, very good. So it's worth a look. All right. In tiers contest, tier 1, you have Scotty Scheffler, Jon Rahm, and Rory. I mean, the obvious play is Scheffler. If you truly think you're going to get a lot of uniqueness off of Scotty Scheffler by going to Rahm, then I think the choice is Rahm. But if they're anywhere comparable in terms of ownerships, I would go with Scheffler. So this is where, if you're a tiers player, you're going to have a better understanding of how ownerships work than I will. But I'm going to go with Scheffler in tier 1. If Jon Rahm is considerably more unique, then I would take Jon Rahm in that case. Hey, good evening, David. Much appreciate Luke List being a local. Might have something to prove. And then Robarian with Poston. I am nowhere near Poston. JT Poston generally does his best when it's short and when it's easy. Think of places like the John Deere, the Wyndham, where he has played his best. Augusta is not short. Augusta is not easy. You see red in the bogey avoidance when it's difficult. Yes, he does pretty good on lightning greens, but he lacks a lot of distance. Again, with the difficult filter, doesn't hit a lot of greens. I don't want any part of Poston. List, on the other hand, he's played it once or twice, has not been good. You're playing Luke List for the ball striking, which, you know, there are worse things you can go on if you're trying to find some uniqueness. But the around the green is hideous. He's actually not been the best when it's extremely difficult either. So I am not on either of those two players. So that's my take on those two. But coming back to the tiers contests, tier 1 I'll go Scheffler. Tier 2, Brooks, Wyndham, Xander, Neiman, and Cantlay. Pretty clearly between, sorry, highlighted the wrong two. Pretty clearly for me between these two. I might actually go Brooks for the uniqueness. I'm very confident in Xander. He's a very, what I'm going to call a safe play. I think he's got a limited ceiling, but a very high floor. But I'm going to go Brooks in tier 2. Yeah, I'll go Brooks in tier 2. Tier 3, Vic, Jordan Spieth, Will Zalatoris, Obear, and Cam Smith. I like Spieth, I like Zalatoris, and I like Cam Smith quite a bit too. Cam Smith's probably the unique option, but give me Will Zalatoris. He has been sublime at Augusta in his 2 full trips to Augusta without the withdrawal. So give me Will Zalatoris in tier 3. Tier 4, Hideki, DJ, JT, Tony Finau, Cam Young, Colin Morikawa, and DeChambeau. For me, it's kind of clearly between Hideki and Finau. I'll go Finau for the uniqueness, but I do think Hideki's probably the better chance to win the Masters. Hot take between Hideki versus Tony. But give me Tony Finau in tier 4 to get rid of the withdrawal risk that Hideki always carries. Tier 5, Homa, Burns, Lowry, Fitz, Harmon, Tagala, Day. Don't care how popular. You could be 50% in the tiers. Give me Tagala. Just extremely confident that Tagala plays well at Augusta this week. And then finally, tier 6, Phil, Sergio, Tiger, Keegan, Ryan Fox, Sepp Straka, and Nikolai Højgaard. Bleh. I don't like any of this. I don't want Phil. I mean, Tiger's a great story, so if you want to root for Tiger, I don't have any problem with it at all. Højgaard could be intriguing, I guess, but yeah, why not? Let's just go Tiger in tier 6. Why not? So this tier's construction will go Scotty with an indication to Jon Rahm if you think he's going to be ultra unique, or at least much more unique than Scheffler in tiers. But I'll go Scotty, tier 2 Brooks, tier 3 Will Zalatoris, tier 4 I'll go Tony Finau, tier 5 Sahith Theegala, tier 6 Tiger. Alrighty, there's a look at tiers contests. Let's start making some classic lineups, how our fellow contestants seem to be building for these big GPPs and how we can maneuver around them. Okay, so in a big GPP, I mean, clearly Scotty Scheffler is the most owned player, so it looks like that's where most everyone is going, which doesn't leave them a whole lot considering we don't have any 5Ks. Now, per Fantasy National, Taylor Moore is getting a lot at 6,400. McCarthy is the most highly owned per Gabe's source. So take your pick. I'm going to go with Fantasy National projected ownerships, but it could very well be McCarthy here. But let's go Taylor Moore. It appears to be where the majority of our fellow contestants seem to be going if they're going with Scotty. Then Siwoo Kim getting quite a bit of attention. Russell Henley getting quite a bit of attention as well. Again, if you see me looking off to the side, I'm just looking at Gabe's source. So thanks again to Gabe for sharing that with me. Let's go Siwoo and Russell Henley. So we have 8,600 per. I mean, our fellow contestants could come up into the 9Ks if so desired. If that's the case, it's probably Hideki at 9,000. And then at 82, Bryson probably not getting a whole lot. Lowry probably getting some attention. Lowry's at 12. Fitzpatrick. This would probably be Fitzpatrick. So there's a look at a potentially pretty darn chalky Scotty Scheffler lineup that you're going to see in these big GPPs. 17%, pretty darn ugly. And you know the problem is I like these players. Like I'm going to be using quite a bit of Hideki. I like Scotty. I like Siwoo. You're just not going to be able to do or put them all together in the same lineup. You're not going to be able to differentiate yourself enough. There's a look at a Scotty Scheffler type lineup. If we want to make a lineup maybe perhaps more balanced or maybe Rory where we don't drop into the 6Ks, let's try to make a balanced lineup. We'll start with Xander. Looks like probably Spieth, Neiman. I could see garnering a lot of attention considering how much I've seen him listed on others' betting cards. So I could see Neiman garnering some attention. Again, at the bottom of this, it would be probably Siwoo, Henley. I'm going to say Russell Henley because he is garnering a lot of attention per both sources. Sahith Theegala is definitely in this as well. 7,800 per. Shane Lowry, Fitz again. Connors is getting a lot of attention that I don't want any part of. Actually, Connors would go here. Sahith would go here. 81. So again, this is maybe Lowry, maybe Fitzpatrick. We'll throw Lowry into this just to differentiate off of Fitzpatrick. But there's a look at a potentially balanced-ish lineup. If they're not going to go into the 10Ks, but they're also not going to drop into the 6s. You've got Xander, Neiman, or Spieth perhaps would fit in this as well. Lowry, Theegala, Connors, Henley. So there's a look at a couple of the chalky style lineups that you're probably going to see in your big GPPs. How are we going to maneuver around that? Well, I've been building more stars and scrubs lineups. So I'm going to try to build you a balanced lineup first, knowing full well that it's not where I'm going majority of the time. So in a balanced lineup, just because of how unique he is, you almost have to think about Patrick Cantlay. 5% per Fantasy National, 8% per Gabe Source. I mean, that's a whole lot of uniqueness that you're gaining. Now, he hasn't been the best at Augusta National, but he hadn't been terrible. You could also start probably with Hovland if you're there. I'm a little bit less on Hovland. But again, I'm just trying to emphasize the uniqueness aspect of this balanced lineup. Go Patrick Cantlay. Will Zalatoris is going to be popular, but I really like Will Zalatoris this week. You could use probably Cameron Smith in this. Maybe a little bit of Tony Finau. You come down If you like Colin Morikawa, okay, yeah. In fact, let's just do Cameron Smith. And we're still not where, we still have 3 spots to fill, but we can average 7,500. We don't have to even flirt with the 6Ks if we don't want to. Adam Scott, former champion here. You can think about him. Justin Rose has played very well. He's just not in very good form. If you're not scared of the debutante status, I do like Akshay Bhatia this week. I think Augusta fits his game, but again, he is a debutante. I myself am not particularly all that interested in Tom Kim, but he played very well here last year. Patrick Reed, absolutely somebody who fits Augusta. 7,900 again is fits. I'm going to throw in Sahith. We've got enough uniqueness in here that I think you're probably looking at a fairly unique lineup, probably duplicated once or twice, and you can bring this ownership down a lot off of Sahith Theegala. I'm just extremely high on Sahith Theegala. Maybe you're not afraid of Jason Day. Look at that. There you're at sub 10%. But I'm just much higher on Sahith Theegala. But there's a look at how I think you would want to build a balanced lineup. Josh, you asked about Spieth. Spieth would fit absolutely into this. Spieth, Zalatoris. I would caution Hideki just because of how much ownership he's garnering. Like if you went with Hideki and over Cam Smith, like you see just how much that ownership's going to rise. You would really have to use Day over Sahith Theegala, I think. Patrick Reed, you might have to come off of him maybe a touch as well. But you're able to build balanced lineups that are pretty unique if you're willing to take a slight bit of risk. Again, say as in a Patrick Cantlay or in a Jason Day who has had fantastic form at Augusta National. Maybe not in the best recent form, but still great around the green and whatnot. But there's a look at balanced lineups. I've been building stars and scrubs because I'm not afraid to drop into the 6Ks. And I'll try to do a couple different lineups. Feel free to jump into chat if you have questions on player A versus player B, or if you want to see like a shell of a lineup, if you have maybe 2 or 3 players that are locks, and you maybe want to see how you can maneuver around them. But I'm going stars and scrubs quite heavily. I'm going to start with Rahm only because of the cheaper price and the astronomical, really, amounts of ownership he seems to be off of Scheffler. So I'll go Rahm. And again, as I mentioned, I'm not afraid to go down into the 6Ks for Chris Kirk or Denny McCarthy or even one of the 2 amateurs. So I've got quite a bit of room here. I could go with Spieth. I could go with Zalatoris. Probably won't be able to go with Hideki because of all the ownership. Let's go live here. Let's go John Rahm and Brooks Koepka. Makes us 7,200 per. That's quite greedy. It's quite greedy. Over the weather for the latecomers. Hey Gabe, yeah, let me finish this lineup here and then I'll do that. Unfortunately, I X'd out of that tab, but I can bring it back up again. Might be a little bit too greedy, but we can go into the mid and low 7s a little bit here. Maybe you like a Tommy Fleetwood. Now, Fantasy National has Tommy Fleetwood around 10%. Gabe Source, who just jumped into chat, which just let me put that out there. If you're not subscribed to his article, following him on social media, you're missing out. It's a great article week in and week out. Gabe Source has Tommy Fleetwood at 16%. Again, I'm not necessarily in love with it, but just to get at least per Fantasy National a little bit of uniqueness here, and then 7,100 per player again is maybe Bhatia. 7,000 you could maybe think about Harris English. Russell Henley might be a tad bit too popular for this. But I don't hate Harris English either. You know, that's a sub 11% lineup that you're getting, you know, two of the tournament favorites by far. Tommy Fleetwood has generally played pretty darn well at Augusta National. I've talked about Batia quite a bit, and Kirk is, you know, my low-priced guy that I am gravitating towards. You're going to see him at least on the betting card. You might see him on my top used players as I need to finish submitting my lineups for the Masters. All right, let me bring up the weather very, very quickly here. I will change the page view for those who have joined late. Let's go and take a look. You and I have talked a decent bit about wind and whatnot, so my answer probably won't surprise you, Gabe, but I am not going to do anything in terms of a potential half of the draw. Yes, the later portion tomorrow looks like they have it better, but with all that rain in the forecast, I'm not gonna deal with it because I could easily envision some delays, which will push it to Saturday morning. And Saturday morning looks like they're going to have calm, sustained winds, but quite gusty. So I don't know how much of an advantage that would be for the latest of tee times on Friday either. You see, no matter where you are in the draw, no matter what time you're teeing off, you're dealing with wind. And that's why when I went through Fantasy National, oh boy, it's wanting to go slow. Anybody who has not been good in moderate or windy conditions, just a significant downgrade. Significant downgrade. Van Rooyen, Villegas, Tom Kim, who has not been great in the wind. I say that, a little bit of an asterisk. He's been really, really good in the windiest of windy conditions, but because I'm using the moderate and windy filter, he's actually been pretty bad in moderate wind. Whatever importance you put in on that. Cam Young. I wanted to like Cam Young a lot, but he has been awful in the windiest of windy conditions. So anybody who has just not played well in the wind, if I'm using them very, very sparingly. That's how I'm handling the forecast, because I'm not going to try and game it to stack waves or stack portions. I'm just, if you're bad in the wind, I'm not considering you, basically. What about Sung Jae? Are you meaning in terms of wind performance or just overall? Because overall, I don't particularly like Sung Jae. I've tried to back him a few times, at the Valspar, at the Honda, or the Cognizant. He hasn't been in good form lately. My goodness. Miscut. Top 20 at the API. Fair. Miscut at the Cognizant. Players was okay. The Genesis was bad at a no-cut signature event. Waste Management bad. Pebble Beach, he was darn near last. Until you show some signs of life, Sung Jae, I just can't. But he has been good in the wind. There you go. There's Sung Jae in the wind. But he's also not been the best at Augusta National. I lied. Clearly, 16th, 8th. A pretty bad miscut here, and then a runner-up. Interesting. I thought I apologize, the vision will be skewed, but I felt like his course value wasn't all that good. Sung Jae. Huh. There you go. I mean, it's not terrible, I guess. No, you can't see that. It's a 64.2. It's not bad. Totally trying to game the way. Hey, if you're able to do it. See, that's the thing, the difference between that thought process and mine, Gabe. I am taking a much more conservative approach into which I am not eliminating any of my lineups from the get-go. But that also means that my ceiling, my ability to drastically rise in these big GPPs is probably limited. Whereas if you hit the wave advantage that turns out to be correct, you're going to gain a whole lot. You're gonna significantly rise, but you also have the crater possibility. So you're I don't want to put words in your mouth here, but you're accepting a lot more volatility for the chance at a huge ceiling, whereas I'm being quite a bit more conservative, trying to limit my outcomes. As you can see, runner up in the 2020 Masters. However, I'm not including that in my sample size because it was played in the fall, and that Masters was such an anomaly compared to all the other Masters. I mean, one, it was played in the fall. Two, it was much, much easier than what we have seen historically at Augusta National. So yes, you are correct. He has finished runner-up here before, but I did not factor that into when I gathered the stats, especially prior performance, because this was such a drastically different Masters tournament than all of the others. That's right. This would be a hell of a week to win one of the contests. Yeah, it would be. It absolutely would be. Let me bring us back to the Excel page view. Again, I'm here for any questions. Gabe, I will be in your chat. It looks like chat here is going a little bit long, but I will definitely stop by there. But I'm here for any questions that anybody has. I do need to give you some answers. So, to you, what is the biggest storyline of the Masters? Right now, Live Performance is winning the poll from chat this evening. To me, biggest storyline, probably Rory trying to complete the slam, although it's close. Hard to say. It's hard not to say Tiger because Tiger, but I think I would, if I were to vote, I think it's Rory trying to complete the slam. My one and done for the week, and I mentioned this when I revealed my rankings. I have saved Scotty Scheffler for this moment. As soon as I knew I was playing one and done, I put in pin, not even in pencil, I put in pin, Scheffler at the Masters. I've just been saving him for this. I don't see any way he doesn't play very well. I'm not saying he wins, although he is my pick to win. I don't see any way he doesn't win, or doesn't play well, excuse me. So I want that assuredness in terms of one and done. So he is my one and done selection for the week. My betting card and my top player usage when I finalize my lineups will also come out later this evening. It'll be pretty darn late. But that will be out later this evening for the Masters. I want to thank P, Robarian, Josh, David, and Gabe for all jumping in chat. It was a fantastic show. Love interacting with you all, bouncing ideas off of each other. And thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. It's much appreciated. I love what I do, taking an in-depth look at sports statistics, giving you a statistician and data analyst's view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. Again, if you have not subscribed to Gabe's article and followed him on social media, you are really missing out. I would not advocate doing that if I did not believe in what content Gabe creates. So truly, go show him some support. Follow him over on social media. Subscribe to that article. Again, my stuff will be out later this evening. For all of the wagers you have made for the Masters, for all the DFS contests you play for the Masters, for this weekend and every weekend, may all your bets be profitable.